Okay, welcome everyone. It's 1:30. I'm going to call this official plan update committee meeting to order. We've got no public notices that need to be read out. You can see that on your agenda, and we'll start with an adoption of the agenda. Is it anyone willing to move for the adoption of the agenda? Thank you, Councillor Hsu. Any discussion there? All in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Any committee members? I see none. So we move to the adoption of our previous minutes that are attached to the agenda. Can I have a mover for that? Thank you, Councillor Davidson. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Carries unanimously. Okay, we'll call it unanimously. I assume, Councillor Liu, you're in favor of the minutes. Very good. Okay. Now, we don't have any delegations or anything, so we have just one item of scheduled business, and that's going to be a presentation by Phoebe Chow, our manager of policy. And this presentation is up to 20 minutes. Don't feel obligated to take all the time, but you're certainly welcome to if you need to. And the presentation is regarding an official plan update and upcoming engagement. Go ahead, Ms. Chow.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon, everyone. So today's presentation is to update the committee on the status of the city's official plan update and what engagement events we have planned for in the coming months. I'll start off with an introduction to just recap on the project timeline and some of the directions that we received from Council last fall. And then I'll provide a quick status update on where we're at in the project, summarize some of the remaining OP update work that are currently underway, and then I'll highlight some of the upcoming engagement events we have in the coming months. And lastly, I'll quickly touch on next steps. You may recall this project timeline from last fall. So due to the significant number of legislative changes over the last few years, particularly last year, we had to recalibrate our OP update approach in completing the official plan update. Our approach now is to complete all the remaining policy areas that you see in the turquoise box in one official plan amendment, and with a targeted completion date in Q2 2026. And just very quickly, these remaining policy areas are provincial conformity, to bring the city's official plan into conformity with all the provincial legislations and all the bills that's been passed in the last few years, including the new Provincial Planning Statement 2024, which came into effect last October. And you may also recall that as of July 1st, 2024, the York Region official plan has been deemed to be part of the city's official plan. So we've been working with two official plans since then. So as such, we will be taking this opportunity to incorporate all of the applicable policies from the York Region official plan into the city's OP, so that at the end of this process, we're working with only one official plan. We will also be updating policies for employment areas, protected major transit station areas, and any housekeeping and technical amendments. And finally, Council also directed staff to conduct an analysis for the regional mixed-use corridor. The purpose of the analysis is to review and update any necessary height and density permissions along sections of the regional mixed-use corridor, which I'll speak a little bit more later. So in addition to the official plan update, Council also directed staff to commence the East Beaver Creek and Highway 7 secondary plan in 2025. The procurement process to retain a consulting team is well underway. And lastly, the Bathurst Street and Highway 7 secondary plan will begin in Q3 2027. This comprehensive multi-year approach will enable the city to meet its official plan conformity requirements and to better reflect and provide policies to guide Richmond Hill's evolving city structure. In terms of status update, staff have completed both provincial and regional conformity analysis. All necessary changes are being incorporated into the draft policies that our team is currently working on. And now I'll go over some of these current work that are underway. I'll start off with protected major transit station areas. York Region's official plan identifies 17 protected major transit station areas in Richmond Hill with the associated minimum densities, required densities. All of the boundaries and minimum required densities have been approved by the province. In accordance with the Planning Act, the city's official plan must include policies regarding land use, height, and density for each PMTSA. So far, the city's official plan contained policies for 7 out of the 17 protected major transit station areas through OPAs 41, 18.5, 18.6, and 18.7. These 7 protected major transit station areas are the ones that are identified by hatching on the map. So however, there are still work remaining for the other 10 PMTSAs. But it's important to note that within each PMTSAs, there are different land use designations with different land use permissions. There are areas that are already either built up or stable that may not see any significant changes. So in other words, by adding policies for the remaining 10 PMTSAs does not necessarily mean that we are changing the land use designations or increasing height and densities in these areas. Staff have been analyzing each PMTSA to ensure that the current land use designations will meet the required minimum density target required by the province, or where necessary, we will identify any necessary changes to meet those density requirements. So as I mentioned earlier, Council directed staff to do a corridor analysis, and this is our opportunity to explore any additional growth on lands that are already designated regional mixed-use corridor located along Yonge Street and Highway 7. Specifically, we're focusing the analysis along Yonge Street between 19th Avenue and Highway 7, and along Highway 7 between Valley Mead Drive and Chalmers Avenue. So these are the areas that are highlighted in black on the map. So for reference, the gray areas on the maps are the centers and key development areas, which generally have higher density permissions and height permissions than the regional mixed-use corridor from a city structure perspective. So when we are conducting our corridor analysis, we are considering any proposed additional permissions in the context of the adjacent centers. No additional lands are being proposed to be added to the corridor through this analysis. There is sufficient lands to accommodate high-density transit supportive developments within the existing regional mixed-use corridors. However, with growing demand for high-density development, it's important to reevaluate whether the current height and density permissions align with current development trends. Our goal is to align our land use policies with transportation and infrastructure capacity so that new development is well supported by transit, roads, water, and wastewater systems. This will help us create a more balanced and sustainable growth strategy that will account for the context and the changing demands and development trends. So to better understand opportunities and constraints for the high-density development along the regional mixed-use corridor, staff have utilized 3D modeling to assess potential increases in building heights and densities. Initial findings indicate that height and density along the regional mixed-use corridors is not a one-size-fits-all approach, and we will have to take into account for the context and character of the surrounding areas. For example, regional mixed-use corridors south of Major Mackenzie Drive have a very different character than the regional mixed-use corridor at Yonge and 19th Avenue. Staff is currently working on a draft height and density strategy to inform updated height and density permissions along the corridor. And this draft height and density strategy will form part of the broader growth management forecast update that's being undertaken by the city concurrently to account for any of these potential added growth. Once the growth management forecast update is completed, staff will conduct sensitivity analysis that will include transportation, water, and wastewater infrastructure modeling to understand the impacts of the proposed additional growth on city infrastructures. Another remaining area of the OP update is on the city's employment lands. The 2024 PPS and the associated changes to the Planning Act have tightened the list of permitted uses allowed in designated employment areas. which are now focused solely on manufacturing, industrial, and goods movement. As required, the official plan update will amend any applicable policies to align with the new provincial direction. Another change from the PPS is that the criteria around employment land conversion have been loosened, including the ability to request for employment land conversion at any time. Again, the OP update will amend any applicable policies to align with this provincial direction. In addition to the OP update, it will also reflect employment land conversions that were approved as part of the 2022 York Region official plan process. And finally, staff are also looking at strengthening our employment land policies relating to urban design and sustainability, and how ancillary uses are calculated to improve our business parks. The last category of remaining work is what we call the housekeeping policies. And these are everything else that have not been addressed in the previous OPAs or does not fit into any of the categories that I mentioned above. But are required to bring our OP into conformity with provincial and regional plans. We've listed these policy matters on the screen, and most of these policy changes are technical in nature. So all the work that I've mentioned are well underway. In the coming months, we will be hosting a series of public consultation sessions on various policies topics. The first one will be a targeted virtual meeting on March 18th with landowners who may be affected by the provincial conformity to include prime agricultural area policies in the city's OP. Following that, we will have 2 webinars on various housekeeping matters. Because housekeeping matters are so diverse, we have divided these topics into 2 sessions, one in the end of March and the other one in the end of April. The OP project website will be updated soon to allow for registration for these 2 meetings. In late April, we will engage with the Mississaugas of the Credit, and we also plan to consult with the First Nations of the Williams Treaties later this year. On May 28th, we will be hosting an in-person public information center at the McConaughey Center on protected major transit station areas and the regional mixed-use corridor analysis. Following that, we will also host the same PIC, but virtually in June. Registration for these events will again be available on the project website closer to the event date. In terms of next steps, we aim to complete all the engagement events before the summer recess. And following that, based on the feedback we received from stakeholders and the public, we will finalize our draft official plan amendment for internal review in late summer. And at the same time, we will also be circulating the draft to the province, who is the approval authority of this OPA, and any commenting agencies for review. We will report back to this committee on comments we received on the draft OPA in the fall, and then we will host a statutory open house and a statutory public meeting in Q1 2026, and ultimately we're hoped to see Council's adoption of the final OPA in Q2 2026. That concludes my presentation. We're happy to take any questions at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for that presentation. Thank you for the update on our update. And I encouraged with the timeline. Last time we met as a committee, we got some news about significant delay, and now it appears we're right on track. And a year from now, we're going to be dealing with a draft plan. So that's wonderful. Okay, any members of the committee have questions? Okay, we'll start with Deputy Mayor Chan.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chair, Ms. Chow, thank you for the presentation. I'm sure standing behind you is thousands of people who have been providing input, and also your team will be working hard. Congratulations. As the chair said, hopefully in a year from now, we would have the official plan, revised one, adopted. Turn to your slide number 6. I have some questions seeking clarification. So if you can bring up slide number 6, Mr. Kirk, I believe you are in control here. No problem. We can wait 5 years for this. So Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kirk. Ms. Chow, I'm just curious on the last bullet. Help me understand, and along the small stretch of Highway 7 between Valimir Drive and Chalmers Avenue, I may be mistaken. I believe there's no planning application submitted for any proposed development in this strip. Is that correct for you, Mr. Chair?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that is correct. We don't have any current applications, but since we are analyzing the corridor and it's close to the East Beaver Creek secondary plan, we would like to take this opportunity to explore if any changes are required in the area.
Okay, interesting is the word if, because as I understand it, basically it's almost only 3 parcel can potentially quote unquote benefit or fall under whatever the future you see in terms of density changes and height and so on. 350, 360 Highway 7, and maybe 390 or maybe 400 something right at the corner Highway 7 Valimir. So whatever is going to be adopted next year, that would apply to those places whereby I just mentioned in terms of height, in terms of density, because otherwise, anywhere between 360 to 400, I believe they're already built. Correct for you, Mr. Chair?
Through you, Mr. Chair, there are certain parcels that are already built with apartments,
Right.
but there are still that have the potential in the future. It is a 30-year land use plan, so we would like to
Right.
take this opportunity to evaluate that right now.
Because when I look at that, I find it a bit odd. Maybe I'll have to go back to the RMUC, because I see there are potentially more parcel on the west side of Chalmers. I'm not going to give you all the numbers. I know them all, but it's all the way to that Beaver Creek area. That is, I'm just surprised because I potentially see that may be more applicable on the west side of Chalmers Avenue. So I'm curious as to the rationale. Is a certain kind of reasoning that may be constricting or maybe not allowing the RMUC to be considered west of Chalmers to the Beaver Creek Valley? For you, Mr. Chair.
Through the chair, that stretch that you speak of is not necessarily precluded from analysis. It's not a regional mixed-use corridor because or I guess I shouldn't say that, but it's also identified as a PMTSA. So if you look at even the previous map, you'll see that it's encompassed in that area as well. So
Right.
largely along the whole stretch of Highway 7, we are going to be taking a look at those identified areas. So it's not necessarily taken out of the equation.
Through Mr. Chair, thank you for the director's explanation. That, to me, which meaning whatever in the future we would be making any changes or permission for height and density on the east of Chalmers would have to somehow align somewhat, or I won't use the word in conformity, but in somehow balance or align with what's going to be west of Chalmers on Highway 7. It's just a comment. I don't need an answer now. Thank you. So if you turn to slide number 8, through you, Mr. Chair, I just want to seek clarification as well. Okay. Again, I start from the bottom. Proposed changes. Ancillary uses. I'm sure there will be definition and so on and so on. I'm not going to name the street or road in the employment area. What if that currently is employment land, but proposed ancillary use could be for something else, such as warehouse storage, through you, Mr. Chair. So is there thinking there will be certain kind of percentage-wise in terms of usage of the employment land for ancillary use, through you, Mr. Chair? Yeah, I only have 30 seconds now, 29.
Through you, Mr. Chair, currently ancillary uses are permitted as part of the employment land. It's just based on how much GFA. But the changes will be based on percentage instead of a hard number. So it's a technical change that we're trying to make a little bit more flexible, but
Okay,
currently we do allow some ancillary uses.
thank you.
Yeah.
Percentage is interesting, but leave it another day because I can think of going vertical. So percentage may not change, but thank you, Mr. Chair. Those are my points of seeking clarification. We have more consultation coming up, which is a great thing. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ms. Chow, and Director, everybody working on this.
Okay, thank you. And the next speaker is Councillor Shu.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Ms. Chow, for your presentation. I would like to support this and just move forward. Just a few minor questions through the chair. Based on the official plan update timeline, there are still several policies work in progress with council and provincial adoption scheduled for Q2 and Q3 next year. So does that mean the process for the official plan update won't be fully completed before these dates?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the final official plan will not be completed until 2026. That is correct. The actual document won't be ready till then. And between now and then, we're working on all the policies and creating the final document.
Okay, if that's the case, would any applications within the newly developed areas not be considered as zoning amendment to the existing zoning destination?
Through you, Mr. Chair, any applications that comes in between now and the final OPA is approved, it will have to be evaluated based on the current enforced policies, which are 2010 official plan policies.
Okay, through Mr. Chair. However, on slide number 6, it shows that the EBC and Highway 7 area is already a mixed-use center. But based on my knowledge, the zoning destination for this area is still local center at this stage as of today. So I'm a bit confused. Will you please clarify on this point?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I guess it's the language that may be a little bit confusing. Generally, we use mixed-use centers to describe any centers that allow mix of uses, and that includes the Richmond Hill Center, which is a regional mixed-use center. Local centers we also allow mixed use. So it is identified as a local center in the city structure. However, the East Beaver Creek secondary plan is where we will analyze the exact land use permissions, height and densities, and followed by the zoning permissions.
Okay. My last question through Mr. Chair is Highway 7 between 404 and Bathurst within our city be designated at regional mixed-use corridor sooner or later? It would happen sooner or later for the whole Highway 7. Through Mr. Chair.
Through the chair, the Highway 7 corridor is already designated a regional mixed-use corridor. So there is actually no change there.
Okay. Okay, understood. So that's all my comment, and I would like to refer all comments back to the staff. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. And I'm sorry, Deputy Mayor Chen, I don't recall. Did you receive the move? Okay. Receipt of the presentation. Thank you very much. And next is Councillor Davidson.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair, thank you for the presentation. I just want to look at slide 8. When we say recognize employment conversions, does that mean the province has made it easier to take lands designated for housing, say, and make it employment, or the other way around, take employment lands and make it housing? What does that mean exactly?
Through you, Mr. Chair, previously, before the current PPS came into effect, the requirement was any request to convert designated employment lands can only happen during a municipal comprehensive review time. But with the new PPS, that requirement has been removed. So anyone can submit a request to council anytime to convert lands that are currently designated employment. So there are still criteria in the PPS in terms of what we need to consider for when we receive an employment conversion request. But the timing is not locked in only a certain time in the process anymore.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair. So it would still come to council and council would still have some authority to discuss it. Yes. Okay, thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, on slide 9, I'm just interested, is it 9? Sorry. Oh, sorry, slide 10. Virtual meeting with prime agricultural stakeholders, I guess. Can you explain what is different for them? What would that discussion sound like? What is it we need to let them know or hear from them?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So under the provincial requirements, we are required to identify any prime agricultural lands in our official plan, which is only a small portion at the northeast corner in the city. So because it is a change and it is a requirement that we have to put in the official plan, we would like to inform all the landowners what it's about. But primarily we're taking the direction from the province. It's primarily an information section just to let them know and give them an opportunity to ask us any questions that they may have.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. So the designation of countryside and all that, that's not really changing. It's letting them know about okay, thank you. And my last comment is just super, super minor. But since April 22nd is Earth Day, maybe you should do the climate change open house on the 22nd. Just flip those two because I know public engagement, it might be a great day to talk about climate change in policy. So thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I don't see other speakers, anyone else with questions? So I just have a couple questions myself, so that on the engagement schedule, April 8th, is it March 18th, the agricultural proposed meeting? So notice has already gone out, I assume, for the March 18th and 27th. They've been given notice, and so where are those taking place? Are we gonna, is that in the website or?
So March 18th, because it's a focused landowner meeting, we've mailed the notices to the applicable landowners. And on March 27th, I believe we're working with communications to set up our project website for registrations for that event.
Okay, it's going to be virtual. It's going to be widely advertised and
Yeah, so we will be
public?
advertising. We're working with communications to advertise for both of the virtual meetings.
okay. I guess that's imminent, I'm sure. Okay, so I still have a question about the planning authority in general. Has the province now assumed planning authority, meaning like we still have a York Regional Plan in effect? Wouldn't it be a provincial plan, or are they gonna bother to change that? It's a little confusing. Maybe you can clarify with the changes in planning authority. How is that going to affect us here?
So through you, Mr. Chair, for this official plan amendment, the province is the approval authority. The region's role, they don't have a planning role anymore, but because they still have a role in terms of regional infrastructures like roads and wastewater services, they will be a commenting agencies as part of the process. However, they don't have a planning role anymore. The province is our approval authority for this OPA.
Okay. Now, well, I understand that change has been made, but it will still be called the York Regional Official Plan?
For the time being, until we incorporate all the policies into our official plan, which is part of the exercise that we've been doing.
When we're finished this exercise, it'll be called the Richmond Hill Official Plan 2026.
That's right.
Or hopefully, and that it will only need approval from the province.
That's right.
Okay. That was the only questions I have. I appreciate the update and all the work that's ongoing. I'm sure that there's a lot of, we do have one other speaker. I'm sorry, Councillor Lee, you go ahead. I didn't see your hand there.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My apology. Just a quick question, and thank you for the presentation. I also very interested in seeing that the small stretch of Vellamee to Chalmers is included in this study. Does that include the McDonald's Plaza, or starting from the gas station? Through you, Mr. Chair.
Through Mr. It does.
It does include the. Okay, great. Okay, that's all my question. Thank you.
Okay. I think it's the only remaining portion of Highway 7 that's not already dealt with either by an MTSA or a local center, right? Is that what delineated that section of Highway 7?
Through you, Mr. Chair, can I just ask that you repeat the question, please, Counselor?
So that portion of Highway 7 that we're looking at, that's highlighted, that's blackened there, that's the only remaining portion of Highway 7 that's not either in an MTSA or a local center.
The portion that you see on slide 6 that's in black represents lands that are designated regional mixed-use corridor in the city's official plan. So that is regional corridor and where intensification is directed along that corridor.
Okay.
So it's representative of the land use designation in our official plan that's titled regional mixed-use corridor. It's the only segment that exists of that nature along Highway 7. It is encompassed by PMTSA boundaries.
Well, there is MTSA on it as
Yes,
well,
that overlap it, yes.
but it's the only area not dealt with. Okay. Councilor Yu, did you have any other question?
No, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Second round then, Deputy Mayor Chan.
Thank you. Because the way I read slide 6 is between Valimid and Chalmers. That's why I thought it's west of Valimid. But now I'm hearing even east of Valimid, 420 Highway 7, which is the McDonald Plaza, which is quite different. That's a big chunk of land right there. So I just want to be absolutely clear. Was it part already the major transit MTSA? Just to be clear, through Mr. Chair.
Sorry, we're doing a little bit of a conga line with responses here on our staff. But in terms of the names that were used to describe in terms of Valimid and Chalmers, those were kind of approximations to kind of give council a bit of guidance on the areas that were affected. So the properties on the east side of Valimid that are still to this day designated as regional mixed-use corridor, those are included in our analysis. And the same thing with the properties on the west side of Chalmers. It's just that there's no street in between Valimid and West Beaver Creek where the designation changes that we could use as an appropriate landmark. So
Thank you.
just use those, as a little bit of a kind of a guiding principle, but it's the, that stretch along there, along that stretch is what we are considering as
Thank you.
part of.
Thank you very much for the clarification. And thank you, Mr. Chair, for me to seek that clarification. And thank you, Councilor New, for raising that, because that would mean another 25% increase in that chunk. 420 Highway 7, 390, 400, 350, 360. So makes a difference. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. And the ward councillor wants to go again in a second round.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, I share the same question with Councilor Chan because it's so confused because it states that it's between Valimid and Chalmers. It should be west of Valimid, but not east. But McDonald Plaza is located at the east of Valimid, so it's a bit confused. So actually, it's between West Beaver Creek and Chalmers. It's actually because if we want to include the McDonald Plaza, this should be west of West Beaver Creek, right?
It doesn't go that far. So it's the intersection. It's the Valimid and Highway 7 intersection, which is the McDonald's
Okay.
Plaza. And so that is the closest intersection that we use to describe that area under analysis.
Okay, so through Mr. Chair, do you have any timeline for the study for this area? Do you have any timeline?
The corridor, through Mr. Chair, the corridor analysis is part of the OP update. So we're doing it at the same time as all the other policy updates.
So this is one of the 10 remaining sites.
Correct.
Okay, I see. Understood. That's all my comments. Thank you.
Okay. So with that, I don't see any other questions. I thank the presenter, and I'm going to call the vote on the motion to receive the presentation. All in favor? Any opposed? That carries unanimously. Oh, Okay. Now I just need a motion to adjourn from Mayor West. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Carries unanimous.